Now that sounds, at first hearing, rather odd, because we have been told, rather insistently, that if you want anything of value, you must seek it, seek success, seek happiness, seek meaning, seek enlightenment, if you are of a spiritual bent. And so we become seekers, professional seekers. We turn seeking into a kind of moral virtue, as if the very act of chasing after something proves that we are serious, responsible, and awake. But let me invite you to consider a paradox. Have you ever noticed that the things most worth hearing in life never shout? They whisper. And when you are busy seeking, when your mind is full of noise, plans, questions, expectations, strategies, you are rather like someone running through a forest, shouting, "Where are you?" and then complaining that the birds remain silent. Life does not shout back. It waits. You see, seeking is a kind of noise, a very refined noise, to be sure, often dressed up in noble language, but noise nonetheless. It is the sound of a mind that believes something essential is missing. And when you begin from the assumption that something is missing, you immediately place yourself in opposition to what is present. That opposition is the barrier. Imagine a man standing by a telephone, dialing frantically, again and again, growing more anxious with each attempt, all the while unaware that the phone is already ringing. His effort to connect prevents him from hearing the call. And this is very much how we live. We are so busy calling out to life, asking it questions, demanding answers, searching for reassurance, that we fail to notice that life has been speaking all along. Not in words, of course. Life does not speak English, or any language for that matter. It speaks in sensations, in rhythms, in subtle feelings, in the quiet intelligence of circumstances unfolding exactly as they are. But to hear this language, you must be still enough to listen. And seeking, by its very nature, is restless. Now, why do we seek so compulsively? Because seeking gives us the comforting illusion that we are going somewhere, that we are improving, that we are progressing toward a future state where everything will finally make sense. And this is terribly attractive, because the present moment, this moment, can be rather uncomfortable. It is uncertain, it is unfinished, it does not come with guarantees. So we say, "Not yet, I'm not there yet." And we spend our lives leaning forward, mentally, into an imagined future where peace will eventually arrive. But peace does not arrive. It is not a destination. It is what remains when the leaning forward stops. You see, the seeker is always looking for a result. Even the spiritual seeker is often seeking a kind of spiritual trophy, an awakening experience, a permanent bliss, a final answer that will silence all doubt. But the moment you turn life into a result, you have stopped listening to it as a process. Life is not something that concludes. It is something that happens. And happens. And happens again. Consider listening to music. If you listen to music in order to reach the final note as quickly as possible, you will miss the music entirely. The meaning of the piece is not at the end. It is in the playing of it. Each note exists for its own sake, and then dissolves into the next. The point is not to get somewhere, but to be where you are, fully, attentively, without trying to improve the sound as it passes. Life is very much like that. But the seeker does not listen to the music. The seeker is waiting for the finale. And so life, which is always playing, goes unheard. Now let us be clear. Stopping seeking does not mean becoming dull, indifferent, or inert. It does not mean you lose curiosity or vitality. Quite the opposite. True curiosity is what remains when seeking falls away. Because curiosity is open, seeking is narrow. Seeking wants a specific answer. Curiosity is willing to be surprised. And life, I assure you, is extremely fond of surprising you. When you stop seeking, something very strange begins to happen. You begin to notice what is already obvious. The feeling of your breath moving in and out. The way light falls across a room. The quiet emotional tone of a moment. You notice how thoughts arise without effort and disappear without instruction. You notice that hearing is happening. Seeing is happening. Living is happening, without your supervision. And this noticing is not a technique. It is not something you do. It is something that happens when you stop interfering. This is why so many people find that their most profound insights come when they are not looking for them, on a walk, in the bath, half asleep, or gazing out of a window with no particular intention. In those moments, the seeker has gone off duty. The mind has relaxed its grip. And life, finding the door open, wanders in. You might say that seeking is like constantly knocking on a door that opens only when you stop knocking. Now, the ego, this marvelous, anxious fiction we call me, finds this deeply unsettling. Because the ego survives by seeking. It defines itself by its projects, its goals, its unfinished business. If you were to stop seeking altogether, the ego would feel as though it were dissolving, and in a sense, it would be. But what dissolves is not your intelligence, your creativity, or your capacity to act. What dissolves is the compulsive feeling that you must be someone in particular, going somewhere in particular, in order to justify your existence. When that pressure relaxes, life speaks, not as a command, not as a doctrine, but as an invitation. An invitation to participate rather than pursue. An invitation to listen rather than interrogate. And in this listening, you may begin to sense something quietly extraordinary, that life has never been withholding anything from you. It has not been playing hard to get, it has been speaking continuously, patiently, waiting for the moment when you are no longer too busy searching to hear it. And as you remain with this listening, without turning it into a new project, without congratulating yourself for getting it, you may begin to notice a subtle shift in how the world presents itself. It feels less like a puzzle to be solved and more like a conversation already in progress. You see, when you are seeking, you approach life as if it were hiding something from you, as if existence were a locked box, and if only you could find the right key, knowledge, discipline, insight, effort, it would finally open and reveal its secret. But life is not a locked box. It is an open field, and the difficulty is not that it refuses to reveal itself, but that you are running through it too quickly to notice where you are standing. Seeking is always about elsewhere. Listening is always about here. And here, this immediate, unadorned present, is astonishingly rich. So rich, in fact, that it overwhelms the mind that is accustomed to simplifying, labeling, and chasing. The mind prefers something manageable, something it can grasp, but life does not fit neatly into concepts. It spills over them, it laughs at them. And so, when you stop seeking, you are not rewarded with answers. You are rewarded with intimacy. Intimacy with your own experience. Intimacy with uncertainty. Intimacy with change. This intimacy can feel unsettling at first, because seeking gives you distance. It places the truth safely in the future, where it cannot disturb you too much right now. Listening, on the other hand, brings you face to face with what is actually happening. And what is happening is not always comfortable. There is joy, yes, but also sadness. There is clarity, but also confusion. There is beauty, but also decay. And yet, when you stop seeking, you discover that you no longer need to eliminate one half of life in order to accept the other. You no longer demand that existence be tidy. You begin to trust its messiness. This is a great relief. Because so much of seeking is an attempt to escape the mess, to rise above it, to transcend it, and while transcendence has its place, it is often misunderstood. People imagine it as floating above life, untouched by its difficulties, but true transcendence is not about floating away. It is about sinking in so deeply that there is nowhere left to resist. When you stop seeking, you sink into the moment, not dramatically, not heroically, but gently, like settling into warm water after realizing you have been tensing your muscles unnecessarily. And in this settling, life speaks, not in grand revelations, but in quiet adjustments. It tells you when to act and when to wait. It tells you when to speak and when to remain silent. It tells you when to hold on and when to let go. But you must understand, this is not a voice you hear with your ears. It is not a set of instructions you can write down and follow mechanically. It is a sensitivity, a responsiveness, a kind of attunement to the whole situation rather than a fixation on your personal agenda. Seeking says, what should I do to get what I want? Listening asks, what is being asked of me now? These are very different questions. The first assumes that life is raw material for your desires. The second assumes that you are part of a larger movement. And when you lie from the second question, something curious happens. Your actions become simpler, but more effective. You do not waste energy forcing outcomes that are not ready. You do not push against doors that are clearly not opening. And when action is needed, it arises naturally, without the strain of self-justification. This is what is meant by effortless action, not laziness, not passivity, but action without friction. Now, the seeker will immediately object, but if I stop seeking, how will I improve? How will I grow? How will I become wiser? And the answer is both simple and difficult to accept. Growth happens anyway. Life grows you. Just as your body grew from a child into an adult without consulting your ambitions, so too does your understanding deepen without your constant interference. In fact, much of what we call personal growth is delayed by the very effort to improve oneself. Because that effort is often rooted in the idea that you are not enough as you are. And that idea creates tension. You see, a plant does not grow because it is dissatisfied with being a seed. It grows because growth is its nature. And you, too, grow because growth is what life does through you. The moment you stop treating yourself as a problem to be fixed, you create the conditions in which real transformation can occur. This does not mean you never learn, never practice, never refine. It means that learning becomes playful rather than desperate. Practice becomes exploration rather than self-punishment. Refinement becomes a natural response to interest, not a crusade against your own inadequacy. When you stop seeking, you stop waging war on yourself. And in that ceasefire, life speaks very clearly. It says, relax, you are already in the process. Now, let us look more closely at this process. Notice how everything in your experience is transient. Sensations come and go, thoughts appear and vanish, emotions rise and fall, even your sense of identity, your feeling of being a particular someone, shifts depending on mood, memory, and circumstance. There is nothing in your experience that stays fixed. Except one thing. The fact that experiencing is happening at all. This is not something you can seek, because you cannot step outside it to look for it. It is too close, too intimate. It is what you are. And when you stop seeking for a ground beneath your feet, you discover that you have been standing on it all along. Life has been speaking through every sound you hear, every sensation you feel, every thought that crosses your mind, but you were listening only for answers that matched your expectations. When those answers did not appear, you assumed life was silent. In truth, you were listening with conditions. And listening with conditions is not listening. When you stop seeking, you drop the conditions. You allow life to speak in its own accent. And this brings us to a particularly delicate point. Many people believe that if they stop seeking, they will lose their sense of meaning, that without a quest, life will feel empty, directionless, flat. But what actually happens is the opposite. Meaning stops being something you hunt for and becomes something you participate in. Meaning is not hidden behind experience. It is woven into experience. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of a familiar voice, the quiet satisfaction of breathing without effort. These are not meaningless things. They only appear meaningless when you are too busy seeking something else to notice them. And so, when you stop seeking, life does not suddenly hand you a grand explanation for everything. It offers something far more subtle and far more sustaining. Presence. And presence, once tasted, requires no justification. It is enough. It is complete. It is speaking to you now. And if you listen, truly listen, you may find that it has been calling your name in every moment you thought you were searching for something else. And perhaps the most curious discovery of all is this: the moment you begin to listen, you realize that life has never stopped speaking. It was not withholding its wisdom, it was simply drowned out by the noise of your seeking. Seeking is loud. It chatters, it argues, it compares, it demands results. Listening is quiet. It does not rush, it does not insist, it does not explain itself. And because it is quiet, it requires a different kind of attention, an attention without strain. The sort of attention you give when watching a sunset, or listening to the rain at night, or sitting with someone you love without needing to fill the silence. Now, notice how unfamiliar this is to us. From an early age we are trained to listen in order to respond. To listen in order to improve. To listen in order to get somewhere else. We rarely listen simply to hear. And so when life speaks without instructions, without promises, without guarantees, we miss it. We say, that can't be it, it's too simple, there must be more. And of course there is more, but not in the direction we imagine. You see, seeking always moves horizontally. It looks for fulfillment in the next experience, the next achievement, the next understanding. Listening moves vertically. It goes deeper into this experience, this moment, this breath. And depth is not something you reach by traveling. It is something you allow by stopping. When you stop seeking, you stop skimming the surface of your life. You begin to feel its texture, the subtlety of it, the way joy and sorrow interpenetrate, the way clarity and mystery coexist, the way every moment is complete in itself, even as it passes. This is why listening can feel disorienting at first, because the mind wants landmarks, it wants progress markers, it wants to know where it stands, but listening offers no such reassurance, it offers only immediacy. And immediacy is terrifying to a mind that lives in the future. Yet, it is also liberating beyond measure. Because when you stop seeking, you stop postponing your life. You stop living on the promise of someday. You stop saying, when I understand this, then I will be at peace. When I achieve that, then I will be content. When I become different, then life will begin. Life has already begun. It began long before you decided to seek it. And it will continue long after you stop trying to grasp it. Now, let us speak plainly about fear. Because fear is what keeps seeking alive, not the healthy fear that keeps you from stepping in front of a moving car. But the deeper fear, the fear that if you stop striving, you will disappear, that without effort, without direction, without ambition, you will dissolve into nothing. This fear is understandable, but it rests on a misunderstanding. It assumes that your existence is something you manufacture. But you did not manufacture yourself. You did not design your heartbeat. You did not invent your breath. You did not construct the awareness in which this very thought is appearing. All of this is given freely, effortlessly. And when you stop seeking, you begin to trust the givenness of life. You begin to sense that you are supported, not by some external force managing you from afar, but by the very structure of existence itself. The same intelligence that grows trees, forms clouds, and spins galaxies is at work in you, not as a controller, but as a dancer. Life is not moving toward a conclusion, it is playing. And you are not outside the play, watching anxiously from the wings. You are on the stage, you are in the movement, you are part of the rhythm. This is why, when you truly listen, you do not hear commands, you hear invitations. An invitation to rest when you are tired, an invitation to act when the moment calls, an invitation to speak when words are needed, an invitation to be silent when they are not. And these invitations are always appropriate to the situation at hand. They are not abstract rules. They are not moral formulas. They are responses arising from the whole field of experience, not from a narrow idea of who you think you should be. This is what it means to live intelligently, not according to a plan imposed on life, but according to a sensitivity to life as it unfolds. Now, there is a great temptation here to turn listening into a technique. To say, ah yes, now I must practice listening. But do you see how quickly seeking re-enters through the back door? The moment listening becomes a method, it becomes another project of the ego. Listening is not something you do, it is something that happens when you stop doing. It is the natural state that emerges when effort relaxes. This is why it cannot be forced. Just as you cannot force yourself to fall asleep, you cannot force yourself to listen in this way. You can only notice when you are no longer interfering. And interference often takes the form of commentary. Notice how quickly the mind comments on everything. This is good, this is bad, this is working, this is not working. Listening does not argue with what is happening, it lets it speak first. And when you let life speak first, you may be surprised by how coherent it is. Not predictable, but coherent, not safe, but meaningful, not controllable, but trustworthy. This trust is not blind faith. It is an intimacy born of attention. It is the confidence that comes from seeing, again and again, that you do not need to micromanage existence in order to belong in it. And so, gradually, without fanfare, something loosens. The constant tension of becoming someone relaxes. The urgency of proving yourself softens. The need to arrive somewhere else fades. Not because you have given up on life, but because you have finally arrived in it. And when this happens, life begins to speak in a way that feels unmistakably personal, yet not personal at all. It speaks through your own sensations, your own emotions, your own circumstances. It does not shout, it does not persuade, it simply presents. And you find yourself responding, not out of obligation, not out of fear, but out of a quiet sense of appropriateness. This is what it feels like to move with life rather than against it. And once you have tasted this, even briefly, you understand something that cannot be explained, only lived. That seeking was never wrong. It was simply unnecessary. It was part of the game, a movement in the dance. And now, having danced that step, you find yourself naturally moving into another. Not seeking, not grasping, not fleeing. Listening. And life, relieved of the burden of being chased, speaks softly, clearly, through everything that is. And perhaps what is most astonishing is how ordinary this speaking of life actually is. It does not arrive with trumpets. It does not announce itself as truth. It does not claim authority. It speaks as the hum of the refrigerator in the next room, as the ache in your shoulders, as the sudden memory that drifts through your mind for no apparent reason, as the pause before you answer a question. And because it is ordinary, we overlook it. We are waiting for something extraordinary, something dramatic, something that confirms we are finally getting somewhere. But life has no interest in impressing you. It is interested in expressing itself. And expression does not require applause. When you stop seeking, you begin to notice how much of your life has been lived in anticipation rather than presence. Anticipation of understanding, anticipation of success, anticipation of peace, as if peace were something that would eventually arrive, like a package delayed in the mail. But peace is not delivered, it is uncovered. It appears when the noise of anticipation subsides. And this is why so many people feel strangely disappointed when they first stop seeking. They expect fireworks, and instead they find themselves sitting quietly with their own thoughts, their own sensations, their own unresolved feelings. They say, "Is this all?" And the answer is, yes, and it is enough. Because what you are encountering is not a solution to life, but life itself, unfiltered. You see, seeking is always an attempt to escape discomfort, not just physical discomfort, but existential discomfort, the feeling of not knowing who you are, where you are going, or what it all means. Seeking promises relief from this uncertainty. Listening does not. Listening says, stay. Stay with the uncertainty, stay with the not knowing, stay with the feeling of being alive without an explanation. And this staying is not passive resignation, it is an active openness, a willingness to experience reality without demanding that it conform to your expectations. This is extraordinarily difficult for the ego, because the ego defines itself by answers, by positions, by identities, by stories. Listening dissolves stories. Not violently, not abruptly, but gently, the way fog dissolves when the sun rises. You do not destroy the fog, you simply see through it. And as the stories loosen, something else becomes clear. The sense of I that was doing all the seeking was itself part of what was being sought. The seeker was looking for itself, like a finger trying to touch its own tip without realizing it is already there. This is why seeking can never succeed, and why it does not need to. When you stop seeking, you do not find what you were looking for, you realize you were never missing it. This realization does not eliminate your personality. You do not become bland or inert. You still have preferences, you still have desires, you still make choices, but these no longer carry the same existential weight. Desire becomes play, not desperation. Choice becomes response, not struggle. Action becomes expression, not self-justification. You act, not because you must become someone, but because action is what the moment calls for. And sometimes the moment calls for doing nothing at all. This is another great misunderstanding, that listening means inactivity. But listening can be intensely active. It can lead to decisive action, bold movement, even risk. The difference is that the action arises from attunement rather than anxiety. It is the difference between swimming against the current and swimming with it. Both require effort, only one feels exhausting. And now we arrive at something subtle, something easily overlooked. When you stop seeking, you do not become immune to suffering. Pain still arises, loss still occurs, confusion still happens, the body ages, relationships change, people die. Listening does not shield you from this, it opens you to it. But in opening, something profound shifts. Suffering ceases to be interpreted as failure. It becomes part of the conversation. Life speaks through joy, yes, but it also speaks through sorrow, through endings, through uncertainty, through silence. If you are only listening for pleasant messages, you are not really listening. Listening means allowing life to say what it has to say, even when it contradicts your preferences. And paradoxically, this makes suffering less isolating, because you no longer feel singled out by it. You see that pain, like joy, is a universal movement, a rhythm in which all beings participate. This does not make pain pleasant, but it makes it intelligible. And intelligibility brings a quiet kind of peace. Not the peace of comfort, but the peace of belonging. Belonging to life as it is, not as you wish it to be. At this point, something else may arise, a sense of humor. A gentle, compassionate amusement at how seriously you once took the whole project of becoming enlightened. Fulfilled, complete, how much effort you invested in trying to arrive somewhere other than here. And you may laugh, not cruelly, not dismissively, but warmly, as one laughs upon realizing they have been looking for their glasses while wearing them. This laughter is not the end of the journey, it is the end of the struggle. From here on, life continues, but it continues without the constant background tension of seeking. You still learn, you still grow, but growth is no longer a mandate, it is a natural movement. Just as a tree grows without being told to improve itself. And now, let us sit for a moment with the title itself. When you stop seeking, life begins to speak. Notice the implication. Life was always speaking, the only thing that changed was your listening. And listening is not something you achieve, it is something you allow. Right now. Not after this talk, not after you understand it, not after you change. Now. As you hear these words, as you feel your body, as you notice the space between thoughts. This is it. This is the speaking. And there is nothing you need to add, nothing you need to remove, nothing you need to grasp. Only to notice. To listen. And to trust that life, having waited patiently for your attention, knows exactly what it is doing.